The first 3 steps is developing a relationship with a higher power. But there's a lot of power that comes into making your wrongs right. Hello, my name is Pej. I'm an interventionist that helps a lot of people with addiction, with alcoholism, with mental health, get the help that they need. Today we're going to talk about why the 12 steps are so effective. So what are the 12 steps? You know, a lot of people say, don't talk about this stuff on camera, there's traditions, this, that, and the other. I personally am not telling you that you need to, that I'm a member of any type of 12-step organization. I'm not here to say that today. And I'm not telling anybody that they need to be a part of that organization. There's a lot of people that get very turned off to the 12-step community or the 12-step world. And let's just be real here. The 12 steps originated from Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous was a organization that started when a man named Bill Wilson got sober. He got sober in the mid-30s, the mid-1930s, and then he wrote a book in 1939 called Alcoholics Anonymous. He didn't even want to name it that. It was other people that helped with him that decided to call it Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, in that book, it talks about alcoholism. It talks about his story. Then it talks, it breaks down in various chapters what alcoholism looks like, and then what the 12 steps are about, and why a lot of people need to work them in their life in order to be able to gain long-term sobriety, or as professed in the book, gain permanent sobriety. Now, a lot of people will frown on just that term within itself, permanent sobriety. You shouldn't talk that way, you're cocky, but the reality of it is when somebody recognizes their alcoholism and they can overcome their alcoholic style of being and living, they can go through the process of the 12 steps, and there's a lot to it. So as an interventionist, when I am working with certain people that have certain addictions and or alcoholism, for me, usually the goal is, first I got to figure out what the intervention looks like, what the person's struggling with. If the person's an alcoholic, what do we want to do as far as a game plan of getting them the help that they need, but what does it look like for them long term? Like, how are they going to overcome their addiction and stay away from their addiction or their alcoholism? How are they going to stay away from alcohol? Well, usually when helping somebody get the help that they need, if we get them into a treatment center or a detox, they need to hopefully get to a place where they don't just recognize their alcoholism or their addiction, but what do they want to do as far as staying on the course and the path of long-term recovery. Usually if people go to treatment, a lot of treatment centers offer various types of treatment. Clinically, therapeutically, they'll work with a person to help them see certain things that are triggers, or help them with certain relapse prevention techniques and many different other things that treatment offers. But usually they send them to 12-step meetings. Some people had a narcotic addiction problem, some people had a cocaine addiction problem, some with heroin, fentanyl, and then some of them straight up alcoholics or polysubstance abusers. They go to many different types of meetings. Some people want to go to Narcotics Anonymous, which was a branch off from Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is considered the grandfather of it all. It's basically the first organization, 12-step organization in the 12-step world that was created by Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith, who was a proctologist. The two of them, one alcoholic helped another, and then thus this movement started. They call it the altruistic movement. Altruistic means to be selfless as opposed to selfish and self-centered. In the book Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about how selfish and self-centered a person that's in their alcoholism can be. It depicts, it describes, it tells you everything about an alcoholic. And so when these treatment centers are sending people to these meetings, or sometimes people from Alcoholics Anonymous or other 12-step groups come into detoxes or into jails to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous by telling their stories in a general way. The reason that I think that they are sending these people to those places is for long-term sobriety. In a sense, it's like the ultimate aftercare program for anybody that's gone to treatment for any type of alcoholism or addiction problems. And what works? Like, why is it that a lot of people go to treatment and don't stay sober when they get out? They might go to treatment, stay sober while there, come out, stay sober for a period of time, but suddenly they go back to drinking and using. Because if a person is untreated, like at a certain point, they haven't yet worked through their issues, their problems, overcome their demons, maybe there's some trauma, maybe there is some work that hasn't been done, maybe they haven't surrendered to some kind of process, or the 12-step process for that matter, they will start to go in old places where they used to hang out, or even within their own home. They are triggered just by the mere fact that this is a place that they used to drink and use, and because they're not doing the long-term work on themselves, they will end up doing what they were doing before, which could be drinking or using. So why is it so effective? Why are the 12 steps so effective? The 12 steps have now branched often into many different organizations. I mean, they have Codependency Anonymous, which is CODA. They have Al-Anon, which is also a 12-step process for the family members of alcoholics. They have Nar-Anon for the family members of people that use narcotics. A lot of people that had kids that had a drug problem end up still going to Al-Anon anyway. But the point is the 12 steps works for people if they really go through steps 1 through 12. And there's a lot of people that are hung up on the God idea. They think that if they go to 12-step meetings or a 12-step organization, they have to be sold on the God idea. I believe that a lot of people grew up in certain denominations, and so they're turned off to the God idea based off of certain belief systems that they were taught that they stopped wanting to believe in. And then on top of that, certain things may have happened to them which just completely shut them off to any idea or thought that higher power could help them. And then there's some people that are just straight atheists or agnostics that aren't even open to this. Now, there are people in 12-step, in the 12-step world, that are straight up atheist or straight up agnostic, but stay sober long term and do follow the ideas of the 12-step world. They work the 12 steps, they're of service to their fellow man, and so they stay sober, even without any kind of belief in God. So that's possible too. Now, the effectiveness of the steps, depending on the individual, when they're going through the process, the first 3 steps is developing a relationship with a higher power, if that's how you roll. Majority of the people that do go, they get to have their own concept. So once they do that, then there's the moral inventory, right? So when they're actually doing this fearless and moral inventory, they're basically researching themselves, going deep, delving deep within themselves and seeing who they resented, what their fears are, how they conducted themselves, both sexually, but also just the way that they harm people. And then on top of that, they are with a guide, a spiritual guide or a sponsor. Sometimes they call them a sponsor too. And they open themselves up in front of another human being. And then over a period of time, they're looking at their own defects of character and becoming aware of them, doing their best to not act on them, doing the opposite, rather than stay in their defects, go into their assets, and be a better version of themselves. And then when it comes to steps 8 and 9, when somebody's actually putting a list of people that they've harmed or resented down, they go out and they make amends to people. Depending on what the situation was, they go look people in the eyes. Sometimes people will write letters if they can't find the individual. But there's a lot of power that comes into making your wrongs right, especially in step 9, where you find people that even if you were angry with them, if you've harmed them or done anything that could have made them feel a certain way, when a person cleans their side of the street, it's uplifting. Whether they're forgiven or not, they learn to forgive themselves, and then the process keeps going, and this becomes a daily ritual where in steps 10, they continue to take personal inventory. In steps 11, they meditate, they pray, depending on what they're praying to. A lot of people pray in God, or they look to God, or they have a certain denomination like Jesus or Allah or whatever, but regardless, this becomes a daily practice. And then in step 12, that's like the real macaroni. Like, that's what it's all about. The 12 steps works perfectly when a person goes through the process and then helps others, when they're of service to others. Some people will go on and do the 12 steps with other people, newcomers, if you will, or people that have struggled to stay sober for long periods of time. And some people will be of service in other ways in their life. Either way, they're out doing God's bidding, they're doing God's work, and so they continue to practice altruism in their actions and their behaviors. And it's usually those people that do get involved in the 12-step world that carry on and continue to keep going to meetings and sharing a message of depth and weight, carrying a message of whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous or any anonymous program, but also telling their stories so that people can, and the process of identification, so people can actually learn from them because they relate to them. Sometimes people will hear people in those meetings and think, I have nothing in common with this person, but suddenly one day, one person comes and shares something and that individual thinks, oh my God, I just heard my story within that guy's story or that woman's story. And that's a very powerful thing too, which then inspires the person to come on this path, work the steps, and carry on this style of living. They start to implement principles into their life. They're not this drug addict that is hopeless, helpless, can't be trusted, busted, disgusted, not to be trusted, all that stuff that they say in the 12-step meetings. But they can go on and continue to carry this message. And why is it effective? It's grown. I mean, even from the time of 1939 when the book first came out, we are now in 2023, and there are millions of people worldwide that are, sober as a result of going through the process of the steps and continuing to grow it and create meetings and go to meetings regularly. But meetings don't keep people sober completely. Meetings are definitely there to have people come and congregate and fellowship and be amongst each other and carry messages amongst each other. But really, a lot of the results that come out of working the steps is, there's a triangle, usually a unity, recovery, and service. When people are practicing all three sides of the triangle, they get results and they get to have these big, beautiful lives. And so you see miracles. People that were once fentanyl addicts, heroin addicts, meth addicts, alcoholics, weed addicts, they then work through this process of the steps and they get to be safe and protected. They have a foundation, they fortify it, and they basically have this recovery that is strong, and they go on, they carry this message to others to the point where they don't have to ever really worry about using or drinking anymore, because this becomes a new way of life as opposed to the alcoholism or the addiction. Either way, if you're ever in more need of more information about the 12-step world and why I believe it works for so many people, we can always have a conversation. You can call me at 310-596-9356. My name is Pej, and remember, it's not for everybody except for those who work it.